If not, we'll move on to announcements. I'm going to do the best I can, and if not, Vicki will take over. Under announcements, we have some announcements and presentations. The first one is going to receive a presentation from Doug Dale from San Francisco International Airport, Information Officer regarding the Airport Development Plan. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to brief you this evening on what the airport calls its Airport Development Plan. This is essentially a long-range planning study that could guide potential future construction projects at the airport. Just for a little bit of an overview in terms of our airport, SFO is the busiest airport in the Bay Area. About 2/3 of all air traffic happens at SFO. The remaining 1/3 is split between Oakland and San Jose. That makes SFO the 7th busiest airport in the U.S., 23rd busiest in the world. Last year in 2018, SFO accommodated nearly 58 million passengers. That's arriving, departing, and connecting. And that really drives a lot of economic benefit to our region. There's actually 43,000 on-airport jobs, which makes SFO the largest job center in San Mateo County. Also generated $8.4 billion in business revenue last year. We also estimate that over 2,000 San Bruno residents actually work at the airport, at SFO. And those residents earn a labor income of over $136 million. So it drives quite a bit for San Bruno as well. What this airport development plan is all about is really how we get from where we're at today, which is 58 million annual passengers, up to the maximum that our airport can handle. Our airport will eventually be constrained by our runways, and we have no plans of building additional runways. So in the not too distant future, we'll reach a point where we can't accommodate any more passengers. And we think that number is going to be about 71 million passengers. And we think we'll reach that point in about 12 years from today. So the airport development plan is really designed to maintain a minimum level of service and experience for our passengers between where we're at today, 58 million, on up to that maximum of 71 million passengers. So the Airport Development Plan, or ADP, is a long-range planning study, really guides future development for our airport, and it essentially replaces a master plan that built a lot of the structures that you see at the airport today. And even if you drive by Highway 101 now, you'll see some of those projects underway. So existing projects under the master plan include a new on-airport hotel. This is a 350-room hotel, Grand Hyatt at SFO, that's going to open on July 12th of this year. It also includes the redevelopment of Terminal 1, the first section of which is also opening July of this year, and a new long-term parking garage, which just opened last month, additional 3,500 spaces of long-term parking at our airport. It also includes other projects such as shoreline protection against sea level rise. These are existing projects. So really what's in the ADP is a future look. The ADP essentially would form the basis for environmental review. In other words, we plan to pursue environmental approval for a host of potential future construction projects. The idea being that when a need is realized for one of these projects to be constructed, we've already satisfied the environmental requirements. We can go right to phasing and funding those construction projects. So it really focuses on terminal, roadway, and support facilities, but as I mentioned, does not involve any plans for runway expansion. So the goal is to keep our airport modern as we grow, to enhance the passenger experience, and to match all of our facilities to that existing runway capacity. What the ADP won't do, this program won't change runway configurations, it won't change flight paths, it won't change the way that aircraft arrive and depart SFO, it won't expand the airport property footprint in any way, and as I mentioned, it won't increase our runway capacity. There's a host of different projects, a lot of which are a parking or support facility, a new central plant for heating and cooling all of our facilities. But really what I'd like to focus on is the section in blue, which are more passenger-focused facilities. And one potential ADP project would be a reconfiguration of our existing international terminal. If you're familiar with it, a large main hall made up of ticket counters with a security checkpoint on either side. Essentially what we would look to do is to create one central security checkpoint make the back half of that building post-security such that passengers could go from one side to the other without ever having to exit out of security or go through screening again. What's good about this is this would allow airlines to operate on either concourse freely, make it easier for customers to connect from one side to the other. Another potential project we would look at is the creation of an additional boarding area or concourse. Today, these are lettered A through G. We would look to create an additional boarding area H that would extend out from where the BART station is located, add additional gates to that area. And we'd have to remove some office and some cargo buildings and relocate them to facilitate this project. In addition, in the middle of our airport, we've got a multi-level parking garage that's about 40 years old. We're looking to remove that and rebuild a central hub garage, which would be a mix of public parking, office space, but also more importantly, a new pickup and drop-off area for ground transportation. One of the biggest changes at our airport over the last few years is the rise of Uber and Lyft. And that accounts for a very large percentage of our roadway traffic today, and we're looking for ways to offload some of that activity off of the terminal roadways into a more centralized area, and this might be one way to do that with that hub garage concept. So in terms of the timeline, the reason we're talking to you about this now is that we are in the early stages of preparing the environmental impact report for this airport development plan. So where we're at right now is the notice of preparation and public scoping meetings, and our hope is that by the end of this year, we'll have a draft EIR available for public review and kick off that public review period in the hopes that by the middle of 2020, we finalize that EIR, certify it, and adopt it. Now, once that's done, we would only really begin construction projects when the need is realized, knowing that we can't always predict the future and what projects would be needed first and in what order. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for updating the community and the council. You know, you do good at what the job you do. I'm sure you do exceptionally well. And of course, I'm sure you know there's going to come questions, at least from the mayor, the elected mayor is, and I understand $7.4 billion, I believe you're putting into a lot of these improvements, which is excellent. A lot of it goes into amenities for those enjoying or traveling, from spas and yoga and all those nice amenities. But what I still will tell you is from the north end, from the freeway that happen that go north or south, for us, we still receive noise. And you're very aware of that. I've seen you at the SFO Roundtable, which Marty Medina is our member, and I'm the alternate. And there's always that frustration, and that we've had a second chance opportunity for people to apply if they're within the flight area, which was about $1 million, which is estimated about 30 homes. My understanding is whether they are or not in the flight pattern, you probably have about 792 maybe that have already applied. So obviously there's not enough money for 30 homes. So what I sit here and revel with all that you're going through and investing within that structure for the SFO county and community, we tend to have the noise. We have the element. I live in the flight path, so I can tell you that firsthand. I do feel it has an uptick. There's some people that I've spoken to, one that I stood on her street for 45 minutes last Saturday afternoon just to listen myself. So with all the investment in the airport, I'm wondering, is there going to be investment to the communities and to the residents that endure living near the airport? Yes, we enjoy the convenience and the proximity, but I will tell you there are people that truly, I've heard one is at a count of 93, and I was very shocked to hear that from the congressperson's office. So what are we doing? How are we going to do more than a second chance, but actually go beyond that and invest not only in what you're doing there for your passengers, but for your residents and the neighboring communities?
Yeah, great question, and a couple of things to address on that front. For starters, we've seen a very strong level of interest in the replacement and second chance noise insulation program. And where we're at right now is looking for ways to expand how many people were able to benefit from this. And that could come from one of two places, really. It could come from the airport's own funding, and it could also come from FAA grant funds, which also have already paid for a portion of the insulation that so many people in San Bruno have had for so many years. So we are looking for an opportunity to expand on that. I don't have more details to share at this time, only to let you know that, number one, we've seen the very strong interest level, and we want to increase our ability to make good on that interest. So we'll keep you updated through the roundtable on our progress there. In terms of other investments that can support noise, obviously one of the biggest changes that residents have experienced relative to noise over the last 4 to 5 years is the new FAA Next Gen process, which has essentially taken a wide swath of air traffic that used to be like an 8-lane freeway, and it's focused it down to 1 lane. And so for the folks that live under that lane of activity, they're seeing a greater level of flight intensity than they ever have before. And this is something we're very engaged with our elected officials on, discussions in Washington with elected officials in the FAA. A process, by the way, that's not unique to the Bay Area. This is playing out in cities around the United States. Some cities, like Phoenix, has actually litigated against the FAA for this issue, and the common theme that all of these cities are bringing forward is the idea of a restoration of the pre-Next Gen flight path. The court order in Phoenix called for this. There's an effort in Maryland right now calling for the same, and that's essentially what we're recommending to our elected officials who are speaking with FAA staff in Washington, is a restoration of that wider swath of air traffic. We're also looking for, although the FAA controls the way that aircraft fly in and out of our airport, there is a new technology that we're investing in called GBAS, which is a GPS-based landing system that we're hoping to demonstrate to the FAA has validity that could become a future standard, which would allow for more sophisticated approaches into our airport. How much that would help San Bruno? Not much, unless our airport is operating in a revised configuration like it was earlier in this week. So, and also working through the roundtable, there's a subcommittee that's focused on backblast noise. We're ready to support that. If we find there's opportunities for construction on the airfield that might alleviate that, we're certainly open to that as well.
Okay, and I do understand FAA has a lot of guidelines, and it's you can't interfere with the Chamber the Commerce, and so you can give suggestions, but you have no way to mandate the airlines, and I do appreciate that. But I do know, too, also having a 10 or 11 to 7 a.m. no flight, which other countries do. And so sometimes I wonder if we get the brunt of that, because in essence they're trying to compete with somebody else who has it, which we don't. So, and you're correct, it's going to take an act of Congress. And that's not a pun, but it's a reality. But I also do want to see, the funding that we're having on the second chance is through the court order, through the action. And that's why we're able to get, the communities are able to get monies where normally the airlines would say you cannot spend it outside of the airport. So that is why we're being able to get that. So that's where I think the investment should also come, with the $7.4 billion going forward, with all the monies we're going to get from the hotel and the other aspects. Not we, you, the investor, I think should also, we should be rewarded as well for being the good neighbors. And let me tell you, it takes all of us, and so we're not trying to push the problem off, but I think this community wants to make sure that they're heard and it's acknowledged and known what we've gone through for decades. Other questions or comments from council?
Yeah, I just have one comment or one question. So what is the airport, the plans? You mentioned it briefly about the seawall. There's probably a number of residents in this room today that are being affected by the FEMA's new mapping. And, a good portion of our city is surrounded by the airport. And based on the wall not being increased or some plan in the future, they're at the mercy of having to pay for flood insurance for the number of years until something is in place.
Absolutely, and this is a project that isn't tied to this airport development plan. This is something that's actually already going through the environmental permitting process, and our hope is that in the next 3 to 5 years we actually are beginning physical construction of mitigation against sea level rise. So for a little bit of background, certain areas of our airport already have some level of protection. Areas around our runways have concrete berms, concrete walls, vinyl sheet piling, all of which has been installed since the 1980s. There are areas of the airport that are on the water line that do not have protection. This includes a Coast Guard base and a water treatment facility. So since 2011, we've been studying the issue, understanding our own vulnerabilities, and developing a plan to mitigate those vulnerabilities. And essentially what we're going to be focused on is improvements to the areas that already have protection and development of protection for areas that have none. And so obviously those areas around the Coast Guard facility, the water treatment plant, will be the initial areas of focus, but we're budgeting $383 million towards this. And as you know, there are a wide variety of projections in terms of what we can expect in the future. There's a lot of opinions. Essentially, we're taking a mid-level projection. We're taking a 36-inch level of sea level rise. That's what we're working to mitigate. Depends on who you talk to as to when we'll reach that, but essentially we're targeting to have all this in place by about 2035. And the earliest we may actually see this is about 2050. So we're giving ourselves a cushion of 15 years or better in terms of mitigation and the opportunity to, as years progress, the opportunity to modify along the way. So we really want to get this in place well before any of these forecasts come to fruition.
Other questions, comments, Mike? Okay. Once again, we really want to thank you for being here with us this evening, and appreciate the update and the information.
Thank you.
And us working collaboratively and closely.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.